started recording this presentation, by the way, so the recording will be made available as well. But the reason for the title of this presentation is that it's certainly something that I have come across from students who, when they start geography in any given year, particularly kind of year 7, year 8, this is one of their leading questions. What's the point in geography? And as a passionate geographer, I found that very disheartening and devastating. But I certainly think that I developed a few ways of overcoming that initial hesitation towards the subject of geography. And I don't think there would be many students that I taught junior geography to that at the end of the year would still be asking that question, I hope. So what I really want to do today is give you a bit of an understanding of kind of why that question comes up a lot. But also, I think it's really helpful just to have sort of practical solutions to that mindset in geography, and give you some ideas of some very practical activities and lessons that can help to show students what the point of geography is, and to engage them as well. So I think one thing that I'd like to do is to start with a quick game. So the chat should be available for you all to write something into. But I wanted to ask if anybody could guess where in the world they think this might be. Just write a guess in the chat. I won't respond straight away. I'll give people a few bit of an opportunity so we can get multiple answers. Okay, we've got a couple of Englands, got an Oxford, Cambridge, Austria. Okay, another Cambridge guess. I will reveal that the correct answer is indeed Cambridge in the United Kingdom. So yeah, Max missing the red post box there. That's true. That would have given away immediately. But yes, it is Cambridge in the UK, and the reason I've started us off with that is that's where I'm from originally. So this is where my passion for geography was born, and it started. Don't worry, I'm not going to go into my my life story too deeply. This just to give you a bit of context for where I'm coming from here, but. My love for geography started actually with my dad, who is not a geographer or a teacher. He's an optometrist, but he loved geography as well. So one thing that that my dad did early on is he bought me a globe. It was one of the first kind of presents I can remember receiving. And instead of reading me a bedtime story at night, he would come in, would spin the globe, and wherever he landed, he would tell me something about that country and build a bit of a story about that country. It was only sort of a couple of years ago that I found out he made most of those up, but that didn't matter. That still, it captured my imagination and a love for finding out about the world around us and the countries of the world. So sort of fast forward kind of 13 years maybe, and I distinctly remember sitting in an A-level geography class, colouring in a drawing of a coastline. This is for A-level geography. And I remember thinking to myself, this isn't geography. And I ended up dropping geography and did business studies instead. And it wasn't until years later that I returned to geography and did my sort of bachelor's in geography and eventually my teaching in geography and master's and now my honours, with a desire to improve student experiences in the subject and a desire to bring back what I think geography really should be into our classrooms. And I found in my experience as a teacher that I wasn't the only one who felt that way. I did wonder though if I could just get a bit of a sense. I've tried to set up a poll here, so let me see if I can get that going. So I've asked this question. Be able to answer that? So if you can, just have a click on the circumstances that best describe you, I suppose. Are you a geography teacher? Oh yeah, great. We've got some responses coming through. Okay, great. So we have got a few geography experts here from the looks of things, and a few people who are experts in other subjects. But it looks like most people have got at least a humanities background. Don't worry, I won't be asking you to prove that or anything. It's just to get a sense of people's kind of understanding of the subjects and an experience with the subject. Right. Great, thank you. So just as I go through this presentation, by the way, please do feel free to jump in and ask a question in the chat. We have disabled the kind of voice everybody's microphone just from a sort of recording perspective, but I'm able to keep an eye on the chat, so do let me know. If anybody has any thoughts on anything that I've said even so far, then please do let me know. I wondered if anybody else, if any of our geography experts have had similar kind of experiences to me in terms of seeing a decline in the popularity of geography and that being an upsetting situation, or kind of what your views are if you're not necessarily a geography expert as well. That'd be really interesting to hear. I'm going to keep pressing through, but do let me know if you have any thoughts on anything. So some of you might be here thinking, yeah, what is the point of geography? And hoping that I'll answer that question. Hopefully lots of you do have a great understanding of what the point of geography is. And some of these ideas might resonate with you. Essentially, we're looking to produce students with global perspectives to help them develop cultural understandings, multicultural understandings. I think a big one is that it's a subject that can encourage curiosity and engagement in learning, even beyond geography alone. To learn about the impacts of decision making at various scales and in different locations, learning about the world around us, local through to global, having an understanding of real world issues and providing opportunities to consider genuine, real solutions to those issues. And developing geographic literacy, which is a term that is kind of gaining a little bit of traction in academic circles. But essentially, it's about an understanding of where in the world places are and their unique contexts. And to understand how the characteristics of places can influence and be influenced by various processes, phenomena, or events that occur. But I wonder how much our students know that this is the point of geography. And I think that one thing we can do in the geography education world is to articulate this in a coherent, sort of student-friendly way. I did want to touch on a little bit of history of geography and kind of how we've ended up in this situation where, in all honesty, geography is a small subject in terms of how many students choose it for senior schooling. And we have to go back a little bit. We go back to the 19th century when geography was essentially trivia. which is great fun and makes us fantastic additions to any pub quiz team. But did it have a huge amount of real world value? It's debatable. The focus of the subject was on place names and countries and their capital cities and where they are. Stuff that I love, but maybe on its own isn't enough to be a rigorous academic subject. And in the mid-20th century, there was a big movement away from this, with kind of a bit of a fear of geography becoming too trivial. There became a focus on spaces, on spaces rather than places. So theoretical, hypothetical ideas, and it became a spatial science, talking about processes that might occur rather than the places in which processes occur. There's been a little bit of a kind of move back the other way, into maybe a slightly more central position, where these ideas are being slightly reconciled in 21st century geography, which is a good thing. But we talk about kind of the concepts, and that might be spices or 10 geographic concepts at senior levels of teaching, or of schooling, sorry. Case studies are becoming a big part of the subject, and skills, incorporating skills is huge at the moment. Has been in the past as well. I think skills versus knowledge is quite a cyclical argument, but at the moment, I think there's a lot of focus on skills. Essentially, I think this history of geography has kind of left us right now with a bit of a shortage of geography specialists, and there are a lot of people who are teachers today that in their time at school, geography was probably kind of going through that spatial science period, and there's a lot of sadly a lack of interest from a lot of people in the subject who are now teacher age, and I think that has contributed to the perpetual kind of continuation of the decline in popularity of geography. There's a bit of a lack of purpose for the subject, and an uncertainty around how we can make it engaging, but also ensure that it is a valuable subject. And that's kind of what I want to hone in on today. And I think it's really important to note that engagement and value can be the same thing. They're not necessarily different. So geographic literacy, which I've kind of put at the center of this, and understanding places around the world, it isn't just trivia. It does include some, and knowing where countries are is an important part of geography. I kind of liken it to the times tables in maths, and this is sort of a fundamental element of geography. So it does include a bit of trivia, but it extends well beyond it. So a really solid platform to understand the causes, impacts, and responses of phenomena. When you understand a place and the context of that place, you can better understand why certain responses to certain things are effective or ineffective in any given place. You might understand why the causes of deforestation in Brazil are different to the causes of deforestation in Malaysia, for example. Using geographic literacy and teaching geographic literacy offers an opportunity to ignite curiosity and passions. Teaching students about places around the world that they might not have known a lot about is an incredible hook, and it very regularly gives students an opportunity to go and explore something that they have found interesting. Students will learn about a country they've barely heard of, see some pictures of it, and then they'll go and look up that country and want to find out more about it. And it builds foundations for high quality senior geography students. Those that have that geographic literacy are better able to understand the higher level concepts that we look at in senior geography. And of course, it does engage students as well. So what does it actually look like? And how do we incorporate geographic literacy into lessons? I'm gonna go through a few examples of how this could be done in a Year 7 geography class. And these examples are all taken from an Ed Rollo slide deck that we created. And it was created to address a couple of different curriculum. Or curricula, sorry. So we have the Victorian curriculum, and I've got a few dot points and elaborations highlighted there. Essentially, this is about the influence of accessibility to services, and how that impacts. Oh, sorry, this one's primarily about environmental quality in a location and how that impacts the livability of somewhere. And for anybody who might be doing a CARA 9.0, these slides were created with some of those elaborations in mind as well. The full presentation will be made available to you, so you'll see kind of how these activities appear within the sequence of the lesson. But for this presentation right now, it's not going to be kind of in that full narrative, kind of consequential order. So just bear that in mind. If we sort of jump from one slide to the next and it doesn't seem to make much sense, that's why. So I just want to show you some of these ideas. And obviously, I started off this presentation with Aware in the World, and that's actually a really easy way of engaging students early on in a lesson. I often use this at the very start of a lesson, or when the role is being taken, and it can work really well there, because instead of having students tell you that they're there with present, they can give you a response, let you know where they think we are. So you can do it as a sort of individual guessing game, and you can always get cheers at the end when the answer is revealed, or you can have students in table groups that can discuss and then come up with the table answer. Always works well for a bit of collaboration as well. Anybody want to guess where this is before I reveal the answer? This one's not Cambridge, I'll tell you that much. All right, I might reveal the answer. So this was Osaka. So something else that I think is really valuable here is not only using this for an engagement opportunity, but also as an introduction to the topic that you're about to learn, that you're about to teach. So we're looking at livability and how environmental factors can affect livability. Osaka has recently been ranked one of the top 10 according to the Economic Intelligence Unit, and a big part of that is its environmental considerations. So it's green spaces and lack of pollution and things like that. So using that as an introduction to the topic is incredibly valuable, also incredibly engaging, and you get so many students who are then fascinated with the place that they've seen pictured as well. Having a sort of globe that reveals where in the world this is as well just helps to build that geographic literacy, and you can add some interesting information about the pictured place. The next example of way that we can engage in this is just using real world examples. So rather than discussing the ways that human beings can alter the environment and make it more suitable to live in, we also want to throw in some real world examples of that happening. And so I think the kind of slightly older spatial science geography would discuss these ideas in isolation from the real world, essentially, and they would remain abstract. But when we ensure that we include examples of these things actually happening, it helps to ground it in reality, and we can see that this is something that can occur and could occur somewhere else. So here we have an example of the Netherlands and their land reclamation, and nice little stat as well, little fact. About 17% of the Netherlands' total land area has been reclaimed from the sea. So there you go. Couple more examples that we have here. So when we're talking about urban design and how urban design can influence the livability in a city, we can have contrasting examples. So here we have Copenhagen on the left, which has been designed cleverly to allow cycling to occur pretty much across the whole city, and Moscow, which is thought of as one of the most congested cities in the world. And again, just a couple of examples of that occurring in the real world to highlight the point that we're making. Don't underestimate the power of images. So the world is a spectacular place. There are countless examples of incredible pictures from around the world that can help to highlight the point that's being made. So here we have a picture of Medellin on the left and Tromsø on the right. And this is talking about how climate can affect livability. Personally, I would love to live in Tromsø, but that's, I think, the point that we're making here is check out how beautiful and green Medellin is and its surrounds, and look how icy and cold Tromsø is on the right. But again, two amazing images that often have, in my experience, inspired students to go and do their own research out of class. In situations like this, often you'll find kind of those really enthusiastic students will come to you next week and say, did you know that Tromsø has months where they don't see the sun or something? And they've gone and done their own research and come back to tell you about something they found out, which is amazing. And again, the world is vast and diverse and fascinating. So this is a real advantage that we have in geography. I don't want to say over other subjects, because other subjects have their own merits too, but the great thing about geography is just how many fascinating, how many cool, how many beautiful examples from around the world we can include. So, in just a couple of slides, we've gone from Colombia to Norway to the Netherlands to Bhutan, and sort of shown different aspects of the world in such a short time. So use that, use the variety that we have at our disposal, is my advice. You can see here a sort of a slightly different hook question. So feel free to mix it up. It doesn't always have to be where in the world. I really like where in the world for geography, but depending on the topic that you're looking at, something else might be more applicable. So this is an interesting one, where how long has air pollution existed? They believe that they have that they found evidence of air pollution as far back as the Roman Empire, which is pretty amazing. But a few more kind of geographical examples. Case studies. Now, case studies have obviously been a big part of the subject for a long time, and I'm sure that you've all used case studies in your geography lessons. But just sort of remembering the power of them in terms of how well they bring conceptual ideas or hypothetical ideas to life, and talking about how air pollution can occur can become quite a sort of scientific discussion. But when we apply it to a place in the world, that's when it becomes geographical. And I do think that's an incredibly powerful way of deepening the understanding of the issue and or the phenomenon that you're looking at, as well as building geographic literacy. So take the opportunities where they come up, to ground your theory in a specific location. And obviously, this is an example using New Delhi, but and global examples I think are really powerful, really engaging, but using more local examples can really help to sort of make the learning feel more relevant to the student and help them to feel connected. So here we're Melbourne based, and we have a Melbourne example of air pollution, and again, just a couple of images that are pretty striking. So using examples at different scales is also a great idea. So here we have another example of a where in the world, and the reason I wanted to show this one is that these can work as a good way of kind of busting misconceptions. And so this is Iceland, which for a lot of year 7, year 8 students in particular, they'll hear the name Iceland and presume that it is entirely covered in ice. So it can just be a nice way of kind of breaking some of those misconceptions and busting those myths that students have about different places in the world. It's also memorable when you have a misconception that's proven wrong. That becomes a really memorable bit of learning. You can have fun with ones like this as well, sort of ask students to try and pronounce it. I'm not going to try. My Icelandic is poor. So another idea that can be added at the start of kind of case studies is to just sort of build the kind of background geographic knowledge, geographic literacy. So one thing that, if time allowed, I used to really enjoy doing would be kind of a quick facts activity based on the country or the city that we were about to look at in detail. And they can be done, I say if you have time, they can be done in literally a minute. Sometimes that's how I would run them in my classroom, is to say you have 1 minute, see how many of these facts you can find about this place. And it's a small diversion from livability and the topic specifically, but it just provides that grounding and a little bit of an understanding of the place that's about to be looked at within the context of livability, just to give that engagement, curiosity, and again, geographic literacy. And it's an entry point to the important content that's coming up. So not only are these students about to learn about pollution in the Citarum River, but they've also learnt a little bit of that kind of trivia related stuff about Indonesia. But yeah, just helping to build that understanding, and hopefully they'll see this globe, or we can point out on the globe, look how close Indonesia is to Australia, and they understand then that it's kind of our closest neighbour, and these can be extended into kind of to take up more time if you want, or like I say, they can be as short as a minute. And that's kind of part of the fun, is it's quick. Get some quiz music going for that minute or something, or a countdown timer, just to add the pressure. And then, as I say, you then dive into the case study of the topic that you're actually looking at within this location. A few other things that you can do as well. You might be able to see here we've got a did you know box. So again, this one here is very much related to water pollution broadly, but you know, a did you know box about an interesting bit of information about the country that you're looking at could work really well here as well. So just a few other ideas for you as well. So research tasks, again, you know, like case studies, that I'm sure that that everybody's done them and asked students to do them, but considering how they can be used as a way of building geographic literacy, again, it can be a great way of doing that. So if you're going to ask students to research somewhere that suffers from air pollution, somewhere in the world that suffers from air pollution, often students will do a quick Google search, where suffers from air pollution, and then they'll tell you about the air pollution in wherever it may be. But one thing that you can do is have create a framework for which they need to build the background information of the country. So ask them to find things like the flag and the capital city and the national sport. Ask them to build their understanding of the country before they talk about the phenomena that's occurring within that country. Personal maps. So you can, one great way of kind of bringing the class together and improving geographic literacy is to have students add their own kind of stories to a class map. So perhaps a map of the world, add stickers to pop a sticker on where you or your family have migrated from, or where you've been a tourist, or a country that you want to live in. And then world maps, they really can serve a purpose. They're not just decoration, but that can ignite conversations, and you know, students might be really interested to find out more about somewhere that one of their classmates has been to or wants to move to. And geography games as well. So obviously this is in terms of where they lie on the spectrum. This is slightly more towards the engagement factor rather than the adding of value, but equally they can still provide value depending on how you frame it. But GeoGuessr online sort of still gives a number of free games a day, so you can use them up on your class if you want, or just don't tell them about it and do it yourself. It's very fun. Google Earth Guesser, which I've shown here with these kind of screenshots. Essentially, the way that this works is that you start zoomed right in on Google Earth, ask the students if they can guess where in the world you are, and sort of steadily zoom out until you get to a point where the outline of the country is visible, and hopefully at that stage somebody will get it. But again, you can do that kind of at the start or at the end of the lesson for an engagement, or just sort of a way to wrap up your lesson, or it can be as a way to introduce a country that is incredibly relevant to the topic that you're going to be talking about. And in fact, that kind of goes for all of these examples. They can be used completely out of context as brain breaks, or they can be used as a hook at the start, or just a way of kind of wrapping up a lesson nicely in the last couple of minutes. But I think as a way of kind of bringing important theory to life and making that learning as memorable and engaging and meaningful as possible, all of these ideas work really well. So those are kind of all the examples that I am running through today. Like I said, you'll have access to the slide deck that those examples came from, and those grey boxes will be removed. So you'll actually just have that lesson on livability, which you're free to use or amend to your heart's content. But yeah, I think the kind of overriding message of this is that geography doesn't have to be either engaging or valuable. It absolutely can be both, and it's really important that as geography teachers we recognize that, because it's through engaging students and making their learning valuable that we're going to end up with better, more passionate geographers, or more passionate geographers than we have today. So I'm happy to open up to any questions if anybody has any about anything that I've gone through. Otherwise, I know it is a Thursday towards the end of term, so more than happy to wrap up early and let you all head off.
Maybe I'll slide in next year, Gareth, and just say that. If not questions, does anyone have any thoughts or reflections on things that they've tried that are similar to what Gareth has shared, things that you've seen worked? I mean, it's a rare opportunity, I guess, of having a group of humanities geography teachers together. If you want to pop any thoughts or reflections in the chat, as I said, where you've seen it work, or if it's a question or it's an idea that builds on anything that's been shared today, we'll just give it one more minute. And while you're thinking, I'll just let you know again, especially for anyone who joined a little late, that we'll be sending out an email early next week, most likely on Monday, with the slides that Gareth has shared today, along with the full teacher version, as Gareth has said, that you can use, edit, change, etc., so that you've got essentially a unit of work on place and livability, your certificate of participation, and we'll also get the recording uploaded as well. So if there are colleagues or anyone else that you think might be interested in today's session and want to check it out, you can forward it along to them. But any comments, questions, things that people would like to ask Gareth before we wrap up?
We might be done.
We might be done. I was allowing a little time because one of the comments when Max answered Japan or that for the Osaka picture, it did take like 2 minutes to appear on our screen, which is very weird. Why the internet's so slow that wherever you are, Max, it took a full 2 minutes or so to turn up for us. So
it might be our internet.
It could be our.
Oh. There's one question that I can see from Julie Gal.
Oh, great, Bez. Thank you. So our computer here in the office is clearly very slow for some reason. I mean, we did have storms this morning in Melbourne, so maybe it's done something to our internet. Go for it, Bez.
So the question is field trips. Are there local field trips that can easily be used to engage students in topographical studies, etc.? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. Field trips is an interesting one that I did leave out of this presentation, but it's interesting because they, don't get me wrong, they absolutely serve a purpose, and they have to be done. The curriculum stipulates that they have to be done, but in terms of how well they engage students in geography, the research, and I'll just clarify as well. Sorry, I did my master's research proposal on this, But the research on field trips is that they offer limited amounts of engagement, which is interesting because I think there's this kind of perception that a lot of us have, that making geography relevant to sort of the local area is what is the key to kind of making people care about geography. And again, it serves a purpose, so I'm not diminishing them or dismissing them entirely at all. But as far as like an engagement tool, they seem to have limited appeal on that front. In terms of where I would go for topographical studies, I suppose it depends on where you're based. Here we used to head up to the Dandenongs, and we could talk about kind of the impacts of erosion, in particular, and of course the thing about Australian topography and mountains is that they've all been eroded. They used to be big, but it's such an ancient landmass that they've all reduced. Courtney has mentioned virtual field trips, and yet local museums do some brilliant ones. Courtney, I wonder if you can just add to any examples of virtual field trips that you've done, or any virtual sites that you've done. And I'm just seeing there is another comment that I didn't see, that Susan spoke about Wordle. Yes, of course, Wordle as an activity with your class is fantastic engagement tool. Do you tend to do that at the start, Susan, or at the end of a lesson? When do you pop that in, or as a brain break even? Yeah, can be a great way of wrapping up a lesson. As a reward for working hard. Are there any other questions now that we sort of seem to have the chat working? All right, should we wrap up there?
I think so. I don't think anyone's got anything else to add. Courtney's just shared an example.
Amazing.
Nice.
Thank you.
Super. Well, thank you once again, everyone, for joining us this afternoon, making the time. No doubt what's been a busy day, but at least it is near the end of the week for us all. So look out for the email in your inboxes on Monday. You'll then also have our contact details. Feel free, if you wake up in the middle of the night on Saturday and have a burning question for Gareth, you can, of course, reply to the email. We'll pass it on to him, and we'll no doubt be very happy to answer. But yeah, we'll get that out to you early in the week. Have a wonderful rest of the week, rest of the term. Stay safe. I do see we've got a couple of thank yous. So yes, on behalf of everyone, I'm to say thanks to you, Gareth, for sharing your expertise with this afternoon. And we'll hopefully see you all again very soon. We'll also ask for some feedback, just in a super short 4-question survey when we send that out. If you could just let us know any thoughts, things we did well, things we can improve, and certainly things you'd like to see in the future in terms of professional learning. We're really keen to make sure that we're working with teachers to help them with all the various things you've got to solve, and the amazing work that you're doing. So thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.